Download the AllStar app. Make your picks for UFC fights, challenge your friends, level up and win prizes. Link in description. Get it now. Rizin champ Kai Asakura, or Asakura Kai, announces UFC signing, and he is in line to debut against a top 5 bantamweight. So he's gonna fight at 135. If you followed anything in Asia, especially MMA, you would definitely know who Kai Asakura is. He's been a Rizin champ multiple times. I think he's the first one to defeat Horiguchi when he left the UFC. After he left the UFC, he's the one who knocked out Horiguchi. He was the first one, right? And that was like crazy. But yeah, he's one of the most famous fighters in Japan. Like his YouTube is like multiple millions of subscribers. Like but it's not like he's just a YouTube guy. The kid can fight.
Yeah.
Like he's not just like gonna come out and like be, let's say, who's a YouTuber that's fighting right now in the UFC?
Paul.
Oh, YouTuber fighting in the UFC.
In the UFC.
Yeah, he's not like a typical like guy. Well, they're already fighters. They come, him and his brother, right? I think his brother will be signed soon, probably. What's his brother's name?
Mikuru.
Mikuru. He's all like Japanese now. Mikuru. Mikuru Asakura. Yeah, his brother probably gets signed too. His brother is actually more famous than him.
Oh shit.
Yeah, in Japan, his brother's way more famous.
Yeah, his brother dating like actresses. And, like, that's the level of fame.
I see.
I mean, he fought Mayweather, his brother.
That's
in
right.
Rizin.
Oh, right. Okay, got it.
Right.
I remember that.
Right. So, what does this mean? Let's get your thoughts, Max, because you've been around the scene and you know Kai Asakura. What does this mean for like Asian fighters and fighters in this region going to getting to the UFC?
Well, the deal itself was because I've been training with Kai since 2022. So that meetings for that deal started around then. When he went out to Vegas and everything, he was going to the UFC all the time and having meetings with them. But there was kind of a disconnect between Rizin and the UFC on that. Obviously they found the connect, the bridge or whatever for that. And I know Kai wanted to win the belt and beat Juan Archuleta first anyway before he was going to go to the UFC.
Makes sense.
But I think like what it means is just, for one, it's another open door. It solidifies that spot that Rizin has, because we already have guys like Kape, who beat Kai for the belt and then got put into the UFC. And then we have guys like Yuri, who was a Rizin champ and then moved in. So I feel like it solidifies Rizin as being one of those promotions that is a top promotion around the world, but I already think it was considered that. But even more so, a promotion that the UFC is going to start having a look at and getting more guys in. And I think that's amazing, just because after Pride, there's been this sort of vacuum where there's less and less Japanese fighters dominating in the UFC, and really in the UFC at all. And I think if someone as famous as Kai Asakura is going into the UFC, I think there are a lot of Japanese fighters that they just stick with fighting in Japan. And I kind of hope that it lights a fire under a lot of these guys, that they're like, oh no, like we can get to the UFC now. We want to fight internationally. We want to, show some Japanese pride and everything in the MMA scene, because I mean, there was a point in time where Japan was the MMA country, and I don't think it'll ever necessarily be the MMA country ever again, but it's sort of lost that like top tier status recently, I think. And I don't know. I love Japan, and I have a lot of Japanese friends that are fighters that fight in UAE Warriors and One and Rizin. Kai himself, he got me one of my fights recently, in December. So I just really think that it's going to be one of those situations where I think it could light a fire under a lot of Japanese fighters and go like, okay, cool. Like, we can make this. We can do this through Rizin, you know?
Well, you got Road to UFC that's going on right now. You know what I mean? They have mostly Chinese,
Yeah.
Japanese, and
Right.
Korean
And
fighters
Korean, yeah.
competing. And you get a lot of the Korean fighters and the Chinese fighters and the Japanese fighters coming through here.
Yeah.
Phuket, just in general, you know what I mean?
That's
you get
true.
them at Tiger.
Yeah, we have seen more of them.
You get them here at Bang Tao, you know what I mean? They're going to like Phuket Fight Club. You know what I mean? They're just all over the place, and you see them come through. Right now, the former Rizin featherweight champ is at the gym training, right? I forgot his name, but
Yeah.
you know his name?
No. No.
But
I-
you know,
I
if you've
think I
seen
know
him,
which one you're
he's like a
talking about.
wrestling background, like
Yeah,
which
he's
is very
good.
rare.
Also,
Yeah.
one of the top Japanese
Yeah.
fighters, flyweight fighters, is at Bang Tao right now too.
Yeah. The blonde hair kid,
Yeah,
right?
the blonde hair
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like he was in Road to UFC, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's so much talent, right, in the country. It's just, is it just that Kai, because he's such a big star, that they wanted to sign him? Or is it opening the door to more people getting signed? That's the question I have, because they have the Road to UFC, and it seems like it's an obligation for the UFC to put on these tournaments because they've probably got a bunch of money from China or something. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
they need
yeah,
to
yeah.
make the tournaments for these Chinese fighters.
That's
to fight.
100% what
Yeah.
I think it is. Yeah.
So I'm looking at it optimistic. Like hopefully they start signing, you know, more Asian fighters, especially from even the Southeast, you know, Asian region.
Yeah.
If they do, I think it becomes a more global, you know, sport.
Yeah.
Because you can't be a global sport and you just have like
Western countries.
Yeah, Western countries involved, and then
Yeah.
you're not a global sport, right?
Yeah.
It's just.
Yeah.
But yeah, they seem like they're signing more. There's more Japanese guys that are like really good, right? Right now, the Japanese
fighter
MMA
this
is
weekend.
in the UFC. It's in like a rebirth stage right now. Because for a while there was nobody
Right.
in the
Yeah.
UFC. And if they were like one or two, and they weren't doing very well. But now the wave is coming, right? Especially with Kai. Kai is like, he steps in, they're gonna give him a top 5 opponent instantly, which means that they want him to fight for the title, which means possibly the UFC will go back to Japan,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which a lot of people want.
Yeah.
And then Rizin probably wants to facilitate that,
Of course.
Yeah.
you know?
UFC X Rizin kind of thing.
Yeah,
You know?
I don't think they would do a co-promotion.
They wouldn't do a co-promotion, but I just
Rizin would
mean-
help them. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like that, you know, you shake my hand, I scratch your back type thing.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't cut your pinky off.
Yeah, exactly. And Rizin just announced that they're doing a co-promotion with KSW.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then they just
BKFC
signed
too.
BKFC fights.
Damn,
Yeah,
okay.
so Rizin is like, it's funny
They're
that
playing
Rizin
chess.
is the more advanced in like cross promoting than any other promotion in the world.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
quite
yeah.
smart. Yeah.
They do
is.
that Bellator X, which I think Juan is no longer with, Archuleta is no longer with Bellator.
Yeah, they might have had an
He's-
option to go to Rizin.
I think they did, and I think he full on went because he's no longer talked about, and when he, like anytime he ever advertises himself, he's living in Japan now. Like Kai was just apparently driving around down the road, saw him, and then they hung out for a day. Kai's like
That's
that.
interesting.
Kai's a super nice guy. Like
And Sergio just fought Horiguchi
yeah,
the other day. So it seems like they're still doing kind of like the trade type thing with
I
Bellator.
think
But
so.
Bellator is going to collapse in the next year or so.
yeah.
Well, they're not going to collapse, but they're going to
I know,
you
Get
know,
eaten
Yeah.
up by PFL.
eaten
Man.
up by the PFL. And a lot of, when that happens, I think a lot of fighters will be released in that transaction, to be honest.
I think Rizin could potentially eat
yeah.
up a lot of the
Yeah.
fighters.
Right.
And you know what, man? Like, even me, I'd love to wear those green gloves.
Oh, of course.
You know what I mean? There is a certain, not even a certain level. There's this an amount of like iconic that comes with sort of the look, the feel that Rizin gives, especially that New Year's Eve promotion.
Oh,
It's insane.
I was
right?
there for one of them.
Ooh.
Live.
I mean, my
Saitama.
like both Kai and then Vince Morales were on this past years, and you just look at the photos, and I'm like looking at my friends and everything. I'm like, these are iconic. These are amazing.
Dude, the show is the best show on earth. Like, there is no promotion every promotion included. There's no promotion. And I heard KSW is a certain way. I've never been there, but seeing something live, UFC, one championship,
Yeah.
Bellator, you name them. Besides KSW, Rizin, because I never got to go to, Pride.
Yeah.
Rizin's the best, dude. Like, you get goosebumps, man. Like, the
Yeah.
arena is so fucking big. Saitama is like,
And it's packed.
and it's packed for New Year's.
Damn, that's
Packed,
cool.
and then it's like they have the iconic like walkway with the spotlight kicks you. Like that's like you can't recreate that.
No.
If you do, you're just copying Rising.
Yeah.
Right.
Like the introduction, like opening ceremony, is insane.
Well,
Like,
it's like, you know how Pride had the giant drums and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah, yeah.
Like, it's just so sick, right?
it is. It is. It's unbelievable. But you got to experience it for yourself one time, and if you get to fight, that's even another level of experience. But yeah, like going back to Kai getting signed, yeah, I think UFC they're looking at Asia a little bit more, and looking to snatch up the best talent in Asia. And looks like they're gonna be paying these guys too, because I don't think Kai would have signed a contract that wasn't like
Right.
a big one.
If anything, I think part of the reason why the Rizin owner was so involved with the talks was to make sure that Kai
Gets paid.
got a ridiculously good
Yeah,
deal,
yeah.
At least for UFC standards. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's good too, just to set precedent. Otherwise, then it's like, oh, now we're in the Asian market, we can pay less, kind of thing.
I mean,
which
he-
is just like crap.
Yeah, exactly. Like, labor.
Yeah.
But he has a YouTube channel with over 1 million. Like, it's like, I want to say it's like 1 point
Yeah, it's crazy.
something million, you know?
Yeah, like
and
UFC.
YouTube pays him, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So,
Right. So like
Well,
viewership.
that's just another avenue.
Right.
Like you said, viewership.
Yeah, because then it seems like a win-win, like the way they've kind of structured it for both the UFC and for Kai, and then like additionally for the, we'll say like the MMA like ecosystem of like Asia, because then any additional people you sign in an area, you know, it just kind of opens up the idea that okay, now we can get other fighters from Japan, or like, oh, now he's done it, this makes sense, we could probably look into taking that same career path.
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, and so there's more opportunities available.
Bro, I can think of like 5 or 6 friends of mine
Yeah.
that are doing really well in Japan that I can picture suddenly Kai gets signed, and in their head they're like, oh, this seems easier for me to get to the UFC if I do
Right.
this avenue.
Yeah, there's like generational significance of seeing this kind of deal take place, because then, you know, now there's a potentially like much younger generation that sees it too, and it's like, oh, that's my dream now. So
Yeah.
then, you know, you can, it's a good way to grow the sport. And then I would imagine the UFC benefits from it too, and like just getting a different population of viewership that they
Market.
wouldn't otherwise
Yeah.
get.
Yeah.
They were never able to break into the Asian market that deeply, especially in Japan,
Right.
with all the other promotions, Shuto, Deep, One,
Yeah.
you know, Pancras, all like Rizin itself, all these different promotions and everything. There's so many in Japan.
Yeah, competitive market.
How good is it that they sold Pride to the UFC, and then all they got from the sale was the catalog of fights?
Basically.
Jesus.
Basically.
How good is that? Like,
insane.
And these are business people. Like they gotta do due diligence and have people come in and like check the books as long as make sure they're not cooked.
Yeah.
And they somehow made the sale, and then all of a sudden, like, yo, like these contracts are
Brutal.
void.
Yeah.
Like they had to re-sign everybody. It was wild, right?
Oh my God.
But they
um,
got screwed.
Yeah.
They got screwed.
But the guy that I think sold, because the guy that sold Pride, it was the other guy. It wasn't him. And the other guy.
oh, right.
Yeah, I don't think the other. I forgot his name, but the other guy, I don't think he's involved in Rise. I'm not sure. I don't really see him in much anymore. I always see Sakigaka Raraba or whatever his name
Yeah.
is. But
Well, he's
yeah,
definitely
man.
the face, right?
Oh yeah, he's the face. He's the businessman. He's the guy that will come in and take care of stuff. And shout out to Shingo. Shingo's the man as well. Shingo is the guy that you don't really see his face, but he's the one that's
He gets it done.
Yeah, he gets it done. He works so hard, man. I've known him for a few years now, and he never stops, man. He's always doing it. He's the one who's behind the scenes with like Floyd, and I'm guaranteeing you with Pacquiao, all of that stuff. He's helping them out, right?
Damn.
So yeah, if you don't know Shingo, You don't know. If you don't, you know, right? But yeah, like all the best to Kai Asakura. I'm rooting for him to go in there and win the belt.
Yeah.
Any Asian, I'm rooting for them to go in there and do really well. Yeah, and the kid, he can fight. And I think him fighting outside the UFC and entering the UFC now is going to benefit him so much because he has so much experience and he has so much big fight experience.
Yeah.
Big fight, like
Huge.
fighting in front of crowds that are way bigger than the UFC.
Yo, we couldn't
Right.
walk around. When he and I
Yeah.
hang out in Japan, we can't walk around. He drives.
Does he get mobbed?
Yes.
By people?
We
Yeah.
went into like a Lawson's, and he was like, "Oh, this is what I want. This is what I want. Like, do you mind just getting that?" And I was like, "Yeah, but you can't get it yourself." And we go in, he gets mobbed, and I was like, "Ah, that's why you told me." And but he's so patient with everybody. He sat there, shook everyone's hands, took photos, did everything right. But it's just like I was like, "Oh man, this poor guy can't get like."
Yeah, that
Can't get
level
a drink without.
that level of fame is tough.
He went to pick me up. He stops the car. He opens the door. Yeah. No, he opens the door. Before I'm able to walk off the sidewalk and get in the car, we had somebody, Kai-san.
Holy crap.
Arigato gozaimasu. Over and over and over again. It happened like so many times.
Oh,
so,
man.
which I didn't even know his level of fame until I was in Japan with him, and I was like, holy shit, bro. So
Yeah, it just shows you why the UFC signed him.
yeah, 100%.
You know what I mean? But he has that perfect fame where you're just so famous in your country, but when you leave, you could actually walk around.
Yeah, you
and
get
Yeah.
some peace.
people recognize you, but it's not like you could be just some Asian
Yeah,
walking
right,
down the street.
same.
It's like, look at this, you know, like Japanese Asian or something.
Right,
Or whatever.
right.
They probably think he's Chinese. But
Just unassuming
yeah,
otherwise.
they're like, oh, you Thai, right? Remember, I'm Thai now.
You are.
Remember?
Oh,
We
yeah.
got caught.
We tried to get
Free
him into
tickets.
Sinbi. I
Oh,
forget
really?
where. Yeah, but it was I think you were resting. But yeah, like so I tried to like pawn him off as my cousin basically to get in, and I was like, "You ready, cousin?" He's like, "Yeah."
And I didn't know what he was talking about. And we just started, he walked through, I think he said something to him.
Yeah, it's
in
like, "Are you
Thai.
Thai?" I was like, "Yeah," and then it's like, "Oh yeah, he's Thai too," and then I think they asked you if you were
They
Thai.
asked me, I didn't know what the hell he was saying. I was
Yeah,
like,
and he's
no,
just
I'm
like-
not going to say yes to something I don't understand.
Yeah,
But
and he's
I
like,
should have
what?
said yes.
Yeah.
But then eventually I got in, you know, because
Yeah,
a little sneakiness.
yeah, because Thai
But
people get in free.
media coming through. you know.
Nice.
Oh my god.
But there's going to be a lot of the new talent. And Kai is kind of he's a veteran, dude. You can't really say he's like a new talent. He's been champion multiple times.
Yeah.
Been fighting all over. He's an OG of the underground scene, him and his brother in Japan.
Yeah.
If you don't know about Kai, just go back and watch stuff from when he was a teenager.
Beautiful knockouts,
Yeah,
man.
he was fighting as a teenager, dude.
Damn.
So good job, UFC, and we'll see what happens with him.